think. Here we go. Cool. Okay, let's make a start then. So, hello everybody, and welcome to the April Welsh Azure User Group Virtual Meetup. Thank you everybody for joining. As usual, just a quick hello from the organising team in the background. Today you've got myself and Matt on to say hello and kind of run this session for this evening. But as usual, this group is obviously set up for the local community. So any feedback, comments, anything like that, please feel free. Drop us a line, say hello, any ideas, or if you want to take part, we got a sessionized link that I should probably be put on this slide, but I haven't. So reach out, follow us on Twitter, and get involved. Help us spread the word, basically. We're still trying to grow our following in South Wales. It would be nice if we had a good core team of people we could go for beers and pizzas with. So anyway, there's our details. If you want to reach out to any of us, please feel free. On to tonight's event, we've got two awesome folks from across the community. We've got Mr. Keith Atherton joining us to talk about Microsoft certifications. So that's going to be a really interesting talk there from Keith, how we prep for those certs. And we've got Mr. Anthony Mashford joining us to talk all about deploying enterprise file storage into Azure. So two awesome talks tonight. Timings wise, we're going to get through this intro quite quickly, so I'm sure Keith will be kicking off within the next couple of minutes or so anyway. As usual, we'll have a quiz. So provided we've got enough of us on the call, I know it's Easter and things are tailing off slightly with virtual events, but provided we've got enough people on, we're going to run that quiz just after Anthony's talk. So please do stick around for that as well. A couple of Amazon gift cards up for grabs there. Housekeeping. Excuse me, as per usual, please everybody be courteous to each other. There's no such thing as a silly question. That's what we're here to do. We're here to learn and ask as many questions as we need to. Please do stay on mute unless one of the speakers invites you to come off and ask a question, anything like that. And please feel free to use the chat window for any questions or anything like that. At the end of the event, we'll put a QR code up. If you can, stick around and sign in and give us some feedback. We do read it and we try and, kind of get speakers on to suit what people have asked that have come and joined so that we can cater for everybody's needs. So if you can leave us some feedback, that would be awesome. And the quiz tonight, we are going to give the Welsh Azure second outing of Quizzer. Quizar? Is it Quizzer or Quizar, Matt? What do you call it?
You know what? It's still to be decided.
Quizar. So for those of you that didn't join us last month, it was when Matt gave us his presentation of Quizzer. I don't know. Is it American accent? I don't know. I'm just falling apart.
Signal R would be Quizar.
Quizar, yeah. Quizar. So, but look, it's going to get another outing. I know, Matt, you've had this tested no end of times internally at Microsoft as well as other events. So. It's going to be exciting. Join in using Quizzer. I should do a little advertisement video.
You buy the domain now. Nobody buy that domain whilst I'm
don't buy the domain name. But as somebody goes on to there we go. It's already gone, Matt. You know it has. But yeah, most of all, be interactive. Enjoy the sessions. We're here to learn together. But just one quick thing on the Quizar point. I put this slide in there just to publicise it. Matt has, very gratefully made this open source. So if you are looking to run, you don't want to get into trouble because this is being recorded, but if you're looking to run a quiz platform, insert name here type thing, then you can go and get yours for free and run it. For free. The source code is open source. Matt's made it.
British. You're still going to pay for the hosting. So
I was going to say, how much is it costing, Matt, to run that? Is it massive amounts?
I did do the numbers. I think it's a couple of £1 a day. I think.
Right. Okay.
So don't leave it running.
Don't leave it running in between.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Look, Ross is now searching the who is. Oh, Matt, it's already .com's already taken.
I know. I saw .com and gone. Actually, I'd already seen that one. Yeah. Thanks, Ross.
There's plenty of other domains, isn't there? There's the .cloud is what you want, isn't it? Quizzer.cloud. Anyhow, Matt has made that open source, so I guess you're open to contributions as well, Matt. Why not?
Yeah. More the merrier. Yeah, there's some issues on there. There's some things that people can work on if you want to have an easy first project to get started with. So
There we are. Cool. So there's the GitHub repo name there. Join in. But yeah, just a bit of publicity for the platform really, because I'm sure when you see it, it's pretty darn awesome. So anyway, anyhow, on that note, just a quick shout out as per usual to our sponsors who kind of support these events with quiz prizes and obviously stuff for in-person meetups when we do get back to those. So big shout out to Servant. I know none of the guys can join us tonight, but thank you to Servant. Thank you to Admiral, locally HQ'd in South Wales, been a big support to the group since pretty much since we started, the same as Servant, and a big shout out to Netapp. So those three companies, we're privileged to have those companies supporting us as a user group. So yeah, big shout out to the guys. So on that note, on with the show, and I think Mr. Atherton, we'll just hand straight on over to you if you're good to go.
Fantastic. Thanks, John. Great. Everything showing okay? Move that over there. Great. Okay, excellent. Hi, everyone. Welcome to my presentation on how to prepare for Microsoft certifications. Thank you, John, for the opportunity to speak at the Welsh Azure User Group. And thanks to all the sponsors for supporting tonight's event as well. So I'm Keith Atherton. I've been a software developer for over 20 years. I've been working for various companies and sectors throughout the UK and US over that time. I currently work for an IT consultancy called Quorum in Edinburgh, and I'm a developer there doing development and some architecture as well. My contact details are on screen just there. If anyone wants to contact me directly after this, if anyone's got any questions, I'm always happy to help. So the point of this talk really was I'm fairly new to studying towards Microsoft certifications, and I've learned a few things along the way. I wanted to share a few things that I wish I'd known when I first started, when I'd taken my first exam, how to prepare for it. So we'll just cover some of those things that I found useful. So what we'll cover today, we're going to look at what Microsoft certifications are, how to achieve a certification, some learning resources, some discounts and offers that can save us some money, and just a few study tips as well. That's really paid off for me. First off, we'll look at Microsoft certifications for those who are new to these. But before we go into the Microsoft ones, just a very quick note to say there are other technical certifications out there, different platforms like AWS and VMware and Oracle and so on. There's others for training. There's some CompTIA ones that are geared towards training and coaching, and some for architecture like TOGAF and a few others as well. We won't cover those today. We'll just look at the Microsoft ones, but just to be aware, there are others out there as well. So first, we'll look at some old school Microsoft certifications. The way they used to work, it was product based primarily before. So this would be against a certain platform in their stack, certain version of say Windows Server 2016 or SQL Server 2000. And we'd have there are a few out there like MCSAs, MCSDs, MCSEs. For associate developer and expert. There's some MTAs as well, some other types as well. But in recent years, that's changed from the product based. So what we have these days is more role based. So we've got things. So on the screen there, we can see things if you want to work as a developer or an administrator or a security engineer. And the certifications are more based around the roles these days, and many of the roles can have some overlap as well. So for me, I do development and some architecture. So, the development solution architect paths have some overlap. They may use some of the same tools. And same with, data scientist, developer, they could be using databases, different data storage methods there. So many of them do have overlap. And that's kind of, the new approach that Microsoft have with certs. And typically to earn a certification, you need to pass one or more exams. We'll go into the exams in a bit more detail later on. So looking at the certification types, we've got the main 4 badges at the top, just there on the right side. So starting with the fundamentals on the left there with a single star, the fundamentals are really just to understand the concepts. You don't need to be technical. It's not necessarily hands-on. It's more just to understand the the pricing models, the services available, the different parts of the platform that you can use to provision services, things like this. The good thing is they're a really good starting point to get this understanding. They don't expire, which is nice as well. And with the fundamentals as well, they're not really a prerequisite for anything else. You can just take them standalone. And that's something that I've done personally, is just do some of the fundamentals to start with, to get an understanding before I look to then, progress up to the other ones. We've also got some, excuse me, some role-based certifications. So there's 2 there. That's the middle 2 badges, the associate, then the expert. They have an expiry of 1 year, and there's a renewal process, which we'll go into a bit later on. And with the expert ones, many of them can have prerequisites for the associate levels. So they kind of go together quite well. And at the very end there, that 4th badge, there are some other additional certifications, such as specialty ones that could be for working with third-party things like SAP workloads, or specializing in a certain part of the tech stack, like Cosmos DB, the non-relational database offering in Azure. And then there's some others as well, like Microsoft Certified Educator for teaching, and Microsoft Office. There's some technical certifications for those, but today we'll mostly focus on the fundamentals, and then the 2 role-based, the associate and the expert. So my starting point, I just went to the certification portal where you can browse them. You can see all the certifications, all the exams. I got to be honest, I kind of got overwhelmed when I saw this massive list, what was available. You can see on the left side, we've got all the filters, on the right with the badges, different certifications. Some in that list off the screen would be legacy ones as well. Lots of different paths, lots of different tech stacks you can look into. So when I started, I was like, okay, where do I begin? There's just so many, it's just kind of overwhelming. Where do I start? So a few things that really help for me is there's a good certifications chart. The full chart's on the right there, which is, it takes a lot in, but we can see that it's actually split into the different domains that Microsoft have. So the flagship one being Azure, which has got the blue bar on the left side. There's Microsoft 365, Dynamics 365, which is the CRM, the ERP side as well. The Power Platform, and then at the bottom there, the green one, that's the security, compliance, and identity. So if we zoom in to part of the Azure one on the left side there, we can see for the Azure Administrator Associate, that certification, you need to pass the AZ 104 exam. And again, some of them require multiple exams. So the bottom right there, we can see Windows Server Hybrid Administrator Associate rather. There's 2 exams there, the AZ 800 and the AZ 801. So this was a good starting point. For me, it was mostly about learning more about Azure. I knew which area to focus in. I then understood about the types. Okay, fundamentals through to associate, through to expert. So this was a good starting point for me to say, where do I focus? Where do I start? Another thing that's been really helpful as well is this Microsoft training and certification guide. They've got guides for all those different domains that we talked about, and it actually does give you a bit of a path. You can see there on the right side, they recommend a good starting point as the Azure fundamentals, the AZ 900, which is the first one I took, and it was really good kind of overview of everything for Azure, that is. And then if you want to grow in the role, if you want to work on a certain thing, or you're currently working on that thing and you want to understand it a bit better, there's a bit of a route. You can follow this path there. You can follow along, see the different certifications that are relevant for that particular role. So again, another good thing. The links at the bottom of the screen just there, but that guide was another very, very helpful thing as well. So very, very briefly, my certification journey so far, I'm still very early in, which is why I wanted to give this talk. I've got this kind of newbie perspective about taking the certifications. How do you get started? Where do you begin? I've just passed 4 so far. I've got 4 of the fundamentals. I'm kind of looking like a broad understanding of many of the different domains. And then after one more fundamental on my list, which is the security, compliance, and identity fundamentals, I'm then going to look to maybe just delve a bit deeper into the development and architecture. Again, that's the role I do for a living, something I'm looking to specialize more, particularly the architecture. So I have a bit of a path. The path may change. Some certifications, they do get retired, some get merged, some new ones come in. So the path may change, my interest may change, but this is the current path that I'm on at the moment. So Microsoft do quote some benefits for certifications. There's some on the screen there that they've taken from different references. People saying that they've got increased confidence in their job. They've got greater work autonomy, more independence doing their job. And some people who hire or decision makers, they do see people with certifications providing more value. I've seen various stats on these, but it's all positive things. Let's be honest, it's good for the CV as well if you're looking for a new job, or you're looking for a promotion, or there's a particular role that you're not currently doing but you do want to do. All these things can be helpful. So I see them as a very positive thing to go for. So we'll have a quick look into how to achieve a certification. As we said, we need to take 1 or more exams to gain a certification. We won't go into detail, but there's a couple of options when you take an exam. You can either go to a test center, an approved test center in exam conditions, cameras all over the place, closed room, very quiet. You just focus on the screen, you take the exam. That's the way I've always done them so far. And also there's online proctored exams where you can take the exam at home. So this is with you in a room with a closed door. You've got the webcam on, just one monitor, no wearables, no other screens, no other people walking in or out, quite strict as you'd expect. And you do have a proctor, you do have someone watching over the webcam as well, just making sure those conditions are met throughout the exam as well. So it would save you some travel if you went for that. It's certainly something I'd be interested in. Personally, I've just gone with a test center just to give me that very focused exam condition space away from the home, away from any distractions. And I've been happy with that so far. So when you do go to book, the screenshot there, you've got a few options. For most people, it's the first yellow button there where you schedule with Pearson VUE. It then gives you the options of the different approved test centers, and from there you can actually see their time slots available for the exams. You go ahead and book those, you get some email confirmations, it tells you what ID to bring, what exactly to expect when you get there. You can read the NDA ahead of time before going, so you don't need to spend time reading that when you're there. And if you're a student or an instructor, you've got this Certiport option to book the exam there as well. One note as well, with the associate and the expert exams, those role-based ones, some of them may contain labs, also known as the performance-based testing. I believe they're coming back. That was on a hiatus for a while, but they are coming back in. I don't think you always get given the heads up when to expect them. I think you can just get them as and when. And when you do take the exam, here's a handy table provided by Microsoft, exactly how long to expect for those exams.
Keith, I think you've gone on mute.
Thanks, John. Appreciate that. So yeah, the handy table just here from Microsoft, just explaining how long the exams take. So for me so far, taking the fundamentals, you got 45 minutes for the actual exam, but you do get 65 minutes. You get some time ahead of the exam just to read the instructions. You've got time at the end to provide any feedback if you have any as well. So if you take the exam and you think, you know what, I think a couple of questions are a bit vague, or I wasn't so sure, there was a typo, or if it was off topic, you can provide that back at the end of the exam as well. So you can see some others there. If you do get role-based exams without labs, 100 minutes, you get a bit longer, 120 if they do contain labs. So yeah, that's quite handy to know how long to expect when you get there. So we'll have a very brief look at the cost breakdown. So looking at the fundamentals, if we look at this AZ900, this good starting point, this is £69 when I recently checked anyway, plus VAT, it's £82.80. On the right hand side there, you can see that on the very far right, if you want that badge, that Azure Fundamentals, you need to take one exam, which is that AZ900, the Microsoft Azure Fundamentals. And if we look at an expert example, so this is where we were saying before, with some of the experts, you'll have prerequisites, could be one or more of the associates. So in this case, on the very far right, we've got the Azure Solutions Architect Expert, which is the AZ305 exam. It costs a bit more for these, and you need to take one exam to get that. But also there's a prerequisite on one of the associates, the Azure Administrator Associate, which is AZ104. So bearing in mind, if you was to take both of those, pass them first time, you'd be looking around a cost of £271. Again, it depends if you do get help or assistance towards the costs, if you get exam vouchers or discounts, but we'll cover some of those later on as well. But something to bear in mind, if you're looking to take, many certifications, 10, 15, more of them, that cost can mount up. But again, we can look at some ways to mitigate that cost. So just a very brief note, there are some things out there, if you hear of them as well, called beta exams. These are ways if Microsoft are testing a new exam, they offer them at a reduced cost, a big 80% discount. People can take them, then Microsoft can get some feedback on those exams. They also do give you a discount for your next exam. So to find out about those, we've got the Microsoft Learn blog, and the screenshot we've got there, we can see the AZ720 on the left-hand side. So for that exam, troubleshooting Microsoft Azure connectivity, that beta exam, there's a good place to hear about them first. Personally, I've not taken any beta exams. I would be interested. There are just so many generally available exams that I'm interested in. I've just not delved into the beta ones just yet, but there are plenty of options there. So we'll look at when you get your exam results, the exams contain 1,000 points with a passing score of 700. Some questions are worth 1 point, some worth more. And for most exams, you get the results immediately or within the few minutes after taking the exam. On the right hand side, there's a screenshot of one of the emails I've received, and the really cool thing, this was for my Azure AI Fundamentals. One of the cool things is the breakdown, the bar chart at the bottom is how they've measured it. So you don't get to find out exactly which questions you've got correct and which ones you've got wrong. But the sections they're broken down into with the weighting, they do let you know, okay, for this one, you're in this kind of percentage, you're in this zone. So if you were to fail and you found one of the exams you were particularly weak on, it would just be a handy thing to know, okay, I maybe need to focus a bit more on this area or these areas for the next time you take it. So yeah, really handy to see those results when you finish. So if you're lucky enough to pass the exam, you do get an email. There's a screenshot on the right hand side there for my Azure Data Fundamentals, one of those that I took. There's instructions there. You click on a link to claim your badge and it goes on the Credly platform. You can see a list of badges. Like I say, I've just got 4. There's some folks I was talking to just before we started the presentation, many with pages of badges, very impressive stuff. But it's very straightforward. They send you an email, you click, you claim it, and it's great. The platform shows you when you've achieved it, how many, when it expires, things like this. So yeah, very straightforward. Now, if you wasn't fortunate enough to pass the exam, if it is a fail, it's not the end of the world. You can just go ahead and book it again. You do need to pay again, unfortunately, but again, if you can get that feedback from those results, you can study more, or maybe find another online learning course, go into the learning resources and just prepare and go for it again. Certainly not the end of the world. You know, it's just part of the course. You put yourself out there. Sometimes you don't make it first time. So a brief note on the renewals. The process changed in recent times. Previously, the Microsoft certifications, my understanding was that you took them. If you passed, you had a 2-year expiry. And when that time was up, you had to take the full exam again to get another 2 years expiry added on. In recent times, the renewal now is a free process you can do online. You can do it on the you can do it from home. And my understanding is that you take questions based on the things that have changed since you passed the exam. So it's much shorter, much quicker. You get heads up emails, notifications 6 months before it expires, and you can actually take the renewal anytime within that 6-month time frame. And then if you pass, it actually just gets added on to the end of that original expiry, not on the day that you've then passed the renewal. So I hear that it's very straightforward, a much better process. Most people tell me these days. If you don't pass the renewal first time, you can immediately do a retake. I think there's then some rules that if you then pass it, you have to wait 24 hours. You can then take again. There are some rules around that, but again, I hear it's a straightforward process these days. So we'll have a quick look at some learning resources. There are plenty out there, which is good news. My first port of call is always the Microsoft Learn platform, which I think is brilliant. Free learning platform by Microsoft, lots of gamification. You get these XP points when you pass the modules. They walk you through lots of reading material, sometimes a video to accompany them, and sometimes you get an Azure Sandbox where you can actually go through with step-by-step instructions. You can spin up the services, you can play around with them, follow the instructions. It's all really, it's all really straightforward, very clear, very good to use. Another thing that's handy as well when you approach the exam, they've got these skills measured sections. This shows you the breakdown. So on the right side there, we can see, okay, for this particular one, this is broken down into these bullet points with these different percentages of how they're going to be weighted. You know, for here, that 20 to 25% is described cloud concepts. So yeah, you can kind of get an idea, you know, how it's going to be weighted in the exam. Personally, when I go for an exam, I try and get a good overall understanding. I don't really sort of specialize in one particular area, just because I don't know what questions are exactly going to come up. But it's a good thing to bear in mind. Some of them are weighted a bit more heavily than others. And the button there at the bottom, that download exam skills outline, this opens up a PDF. It's a lot more detail of what they expect, a lot more bullet points, a lot more in detail of exactly what kind of things they'll be looking for. So that's always good to review that before the exam to see, you know, to try and see what to expect, what would come up in the exam. Really, really handy stuff. Another thing that's useful, goes into a lot more detail on the particular platforms, is the Microsoft Docs. Link is there below. And again, you can go into the different sections, understand more about what features and options you have available. And another thing that's fairly new, which is really cool, is the Microsoft Exam Sandbox. And it's something I wish I had before my first exam. So before I went in, I thought, okay, I didn't quite know what to expect. But this provided by Microsoft, you can actually have a go in a sandbox, and it actually shows you the UI. We can see on the right hand side there, you show the time remaining, that ticks down in the top right with the progress bar of how many questions along you are, but also the kind of UI to expect. So here you get the question, the one on screen there has a radio button with a single option to select. Obviously, they're not actual questions you would get in an exam, but just to get used to the UI, the screen with the, you know, all the info before you start the exam, leaving feedback on questions afterwards as well. So this is really good. You get different UI formats of dragging and dropping and reordering different things. or checkboxes where you may have 5 options, you need to pick 2 from the 5. So this is good just to get some familiarity before you go into an exam. I find something like this is really handy just to, to know what to expect when you get there. So some of the learning resources, there are tons online. YouTube is really good. I'll give a shout out to John Saville's technical training here. There are plenty out there, but John's got some really good study crams. He can boil down, some of the certification exams within an hour or two of, he opens up a whiteboard, he does some diagramming, he explains things very clearly. I find it works really well for me. So this can be a good bit of last minute prep just to get a good overview within an hour or so of, how does everything hold together? What's part of this ecosystem for this particular exam that I'm going for? Another thing that I've heard is good, but I've not used myself yet, books to prepare as well. There are many good ones out there. I would be interested in using books. One thing that I would bear in mind as well is how up to date the books are. Many get new versions, many editions that are updated. One thing I'd say with this, let's say AZ900, I think it actually changed back in January this year. So one thing to bear in mind with that is if you saw a book, I don't know, you went to Amazon or wherever it was, you saw a book, but it was actually published, say, 5 years ago. It may not include those, may not be up to date, include those latest services, or may include services that have since retired or things that have changed since then. Just one thing to bear in mind with books. Again, I'd be open to using them. I've just found enough good online content and other things. I've just not had to use them just yet. So a few good online platforms that I found very useful. Udemy is one. Again, I'll focus on this AZ900. I've done a few of Scott Duffy's there, which is featured on the right. Other good instructors are available, of course, but I can speak from experience. I've been very happy with some of Scott's. He always makes a point of keeping his courses up to date as well. So when we mentioned there about, if things change, Scott, he keeps his courses up to date. You can see he's got Jan 2022 up there. He's making a point. This has got the latest and greatest information. You've got confidence when you learn. You're learning the latest ones that are used for that certification. And another thing as well, you can see the price there, $14.99. That's currently got 70% off when I last took a screenshot. I would say as well, I find Udemy do have regular sales. So pro tip, unless you're in a hurry and you do want to use Udemy, I'd maybe wait a few weeks and just see if they've got a sale on. But yeah, been very happy with their courses. Pluralsight, one of the market leaders, again, AZ900. I found, very clear, very good video course content with them as well. One thing I found with those as well, with Pluralsight, that they've got some great standard plans with good courses. But if you're intending to take certification exams, on some of their premium plans, they actually do have some guides geared up just for certifications, some practice exams as well. So if you can stretch, or your employer, if they provide it, if they can stretch to the premium subscription, it can be well worth it if you're aiming for certification exams. And last one I'll focus on is LinkedIn Learning. Always been happy with the quality there, always been brilliant. They've got some of them for some of the certification paths. It's something they're growing, they're expanding and adding more. The focus there on the AZ900. They've got monthly or yearly plans you can go for. Again, it's great video content broken down into manageable modules. It's really good stuff. Some others that I've used as well, CBT Nuggets, Cloud Skills IO, which is on the right, Skylines Academy and WizLabs as well. Some of them also include practice exams and other content. So yeah, spoiled for choice. There are plenty out there. So another thing to bear in mind, it's a higher cost offshore, or can be, is some of the learning partners. So these can be external training companies that have partnered with Microsoft. On the right hand side, they are focused to some of the UK provided ones. I've used some of them with different IT consultancies over the years, like Learning Tree, New Horizons, and QA. I think I've used all three of them. I've been happy with them all. I'm sure there are many good ones amongst that list. Now with these, you'll get live instructor-led courses, but that's where the extra money can go. If you've got a knowledgeable instructor, they're an expert trainer. If you want to drill deep into a certain area, or you have some questions, that's where the money goes. You can dig a bit deeper in certain areas if you need to, and get that extra support, that extra help from an instructor. Another thing that's an option as well, I mentioned practice tests. Microsoft do have an official practice test list as well. So for AZ900, you can get access for 30 days or 60 days. There are some benefits using those. They do give you detailed answers and references to go and learn more. You get an instant score report. It's, I've heard it's very good. I've heard very good reports. I've not used them myself. I have used some unofficial practice exams from other providers before, and I've got to be honest, some of them I've had a bit mixed results. I've gone one exam, I think I took a unofficial practice exam, I got a 50%, another got 100%. The real exam I got maybe around that 800 mark, around that 80%. Doesn't quite equate to percentages, but so yeah, maybe the official one's a better option. So we'll look briefly at some discounts as well, some ways of saving money on those exams. Again, things I'd wish I'd known when I'd first started. So Microsoft have got 30 days to learn it. They've got a challenge there that if you learn all the Microsoft Learn modules within the 30 days, you can get a 50% off the cost of the exam. So on the right there, we can see some of the options like Azure Cosmos, DB Developer, and Azure Solutions Architect. So if you can find the right thing for you, that could be a way of getting a discount when the exam comes. Another thing I'll mention, this has actually passed now, unfortunately, but hopefully it'll return. This is the Microsoft Ignite Cloud Skills Challenge. So the last one they did, it actually ended at the end of November last year. But what they had, it was a similar thing. They've got 12 different challenges. And again, if you took all the Microsoft Learn modules by the deadline, so if you find the right thing you want within those challenges, in this case, you actually earned a free exam voucher. So again, if the right thing is on the list of challenges, that can be a good money saving. But I think one of the best I've saved till last really here is the Microsoft Virtual Training Days. I've done a few of these for the fundamentals so far, and I really found them useful because you get free expert training. I've always been happy. It's always been very clear, very good. It's either typically over 1 or 2 sessions for these fundamentals that I've done. And for many of the fundamentals, they offer a free exam voucher when you complete the training as well. I've typically received that within an email. It's been about 1 or 2 days after I've completed the training. So again, if you're looking to take 1 or 2 fundamentals, here's a way you can go ahead and have your first shot for free. So yeah, if you go to the Microsoft Events page, one of the links is at the bottom just there. You find the one you're after. This is an older screenshot. We can see some from March here, but if you go to the latest page, you can see the ones coming up. Someone gave me a pro tip on this as well. If you don't find it on the UK page, but if you go to Microsoft Events just in general, you might find it's, if it's in the language you're after, let's say English, but it's provided in a different region, it maybe they have availability, but the UK one's fully booked. So you may still be able to take it rather than wait a few more months until it comes round again. So yeah, very, very handy to know that. And again, just as I mentioned, you do get an email afterwards. That's what it looks like. And at the bottom there, we have a link, and you can go ahead and click, and it just gives you, click here to claim 100% off your exam. You go ahead to the test center or however you want to book the exam. And again, it makes it totally free when you book the exam. Really useful. Another thing to consider as well is employer support. So if you work for someone, do they provide training? Do they have external training providers? That's something I've been lucky enough to have in the past with some companies. Do they have a Pluralsight subscription or something similar to this, or contribute towards the costs? Would they contribute towards the exam costs? If they don't, can you ask them for that? Or if you're lucky enough to work, say, for a Microsoft partnered company, they might actually, have free exam vouchers or contribute towards the cost. Another thing as well that could be more valuable than the money is, many of us are very busy lives. So if you could save time, if you're able to study during the work hours, that could be something to, ask your employer about. Maybe they could give you a couple of hours a week just to work away on them. And one thing to bear in mind as well is, what's in it for your employer. So I'm looking now, work for a great company who are a Microsoft partner. Part of that is they need people who are Microsoft certified for that partnership. So there's an incentive there as well. But also just to have trained employees, people who really know their stuff. There can be a lot in it for them. So if you're thinking of approaching them, some things to bear in mind. So the last thing regarding certification prep, again, there are tons of options out there. Seems to have really exploded in recent years. Lots of blogs, lots of different materials, people putting different study guides there. To some of the content we've seen today of here's where you can go, here's where you can find out more. Someone I will name drop is Gregor Suttie. He's got a really good blog, and it was actually reading Gregor's blog actually got me interested in certifications in the first place. It's something I put off for years, but when I saw his study guides and the success he was getting, and he's does great community work and shares that knowledge, I thought, okay, well, let me take a look. He helped me get started. Start with this exam, think about what you want to do next. So yeah, looking around, there's tons and tons of help out there. Really, really good. So what we'll do now is we'll just wrap up with a few study tips, things that have worked for me. Everyone's got their own approach, obviously. But to start with, I'd say, the main thing is just to prepare. If a lot of the content we've gone through there, many of it's free. Many of it you might be able to get subsidized or some financial help with. But if you do your preparation, you've got the Microsoft Learn, you've got other online courses, you've got other people putting things on YouTube, maybe varied in quality, but you can get reviews and recommendations. There's tons of ways you can do that. And the way I prepare is normally Microsoft Learn first. I'll go through there. I'll try and find another online course. LinkedIn Learning, that tends to be where I go first, and then maybe a John Saville's training video just to get the study crammed before the exam. So I find if I do 2 or 3 things, it can really reinforce that knowledge for me. And sometimes the different trainers or instructors approach it a bit more in depth than others, or in a different way from others. So that could be a useful way that could really kind of plug any gaps that I may have. So I find that's really useful. Next thing as well, I'd say just be confident. Well, all right, maybe not overconfident, but if you've done all your prep and you're happy where you are, just try and relax. Go in on the day, just try and enjoy it. Know you've done all you can. You're ready to take it. And again, if you don't pass that first time, you can always just book again. It's not the end of the world. So yeah, just go in, try and relax, try and enjoy, and just know that you're ready for it. You've prepared for it, and that's why you've booked the exam. And the last thing I'll cover as well is one thing that works well for me may be different for others. I always try and read the question and then I think about what the answer might be before I see the options. You might have a gut instinct, or you might think, okay, yeah, I actually used this. I've been hands-on, I've used it, or I've read about this. I think I know what it is. Before I read the options and maybe get swayed or get biased by them. So I'll show a question now. Believe it or not, this is not an actual Microsoft question. You sign NDAs and everything, so I couldn't do that. But I'll show you an example. So the question is, which Welsh former professional boxing world champion retired in February 2009 with an undefeated record? Okay, I'm pretty sure I know who this is. Yeah, I think it's Joe Calzaghe. It's got to be Joe. Yeah, all day long. I think it's Joe. So we'll go ahead and look at the options. Okay, so reading through those, Jacob Rees-Mogg, no. Charlie Chaplin, I don't think so. It's not Bill Gates. Yep, Joe. I was expecting Joe. I've seen Joe. I'm now extra confident. That's the result for me. That's the one. So again, handy thing, if you think about it before you read them, it's just a way of getting it clear in your head, being confident. So just to summarize the topics we covered, what are Microsoft certifications? How do you go ahead and achieve one? Tons of different learning resources out there. Some discounts and offers, ways of saving money when you take the exams, and different study tips for whatever they're worth as well. So if you've reached this point, thank you very much for watching and listening. And if anyone wants to ask me any questions after today or after this session, my contact details on screen. I'm always happy to help. Please feel free to reach out. I'm quite active on Twitter and LinkedIn. And just thanks again. Thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Keith. That was excellent. Some really good hints and tips there as well. And yeah, I think the chat has been filled with other people's opinions and other bits and pieces as you've been talking away there. So yeah, really appreciate that, Keith. Yeah, I don't think we've got any questions outstanding in the chat, but if anybody has anything they'd like to ask, then drop it in the chat and I'm sure Keith can jump on. Or nope, Anthony's just typing something now. But absolutely. Keith, no, thanks so much. If everybody wants to come off mute and give Keith a round of applause for that, that was excellent. Thank you very much, sir.
Very kind. Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks a lot, Keith. Okie dokie. So we'll move promptly on, and I'll hand you straight over to Mr. Mashford if you are there, Anthony.
I am, John. Yeah, hi. Wasn't expecting that to come so quickly. So, well done, Keith. Great session. Thank you very much. Really interesting. And yeah, Microsoft exams, really interesting subject. And I think it's really important to share that because it can, for people, first time, daunting, massively daunting. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you. So I'm just going to get myself prepped here, John. I'm going to get my screen up and fingers crossed it will show up okay.
You just missed the licensing questions there. I noticed Dean Ellaby has just joined there, Keith. So you've just got out of that one quite well.
Ooh,
lucky.
Where's that gone? Okay, fingers crossed you can see a presentation.
Yeah, so, got you there loud and clear.
Cool. Got multiple screens. Never know. It depends what mood PowerPoint is in as to which screen it's going to use. But yeah, great. Okay, cool. Thank you, guys. Very quick introduction to myself. My name is Anthony Mashford. I'm a cloud solution architect working at Netapp, and I'm part of the Azure Business Group, so I'm actually embedded within the Microsoft teams as well. I've been in the industry over 20 years, so you know all sorts of roles and bounced around a bit. And I've been working within Azure since really 2012 was my first experience, and then full time since 2014. And really, my speciality is data centers. Historically, you know, I'm lifting heavy bits of tin in and out of racks, running miles and miles of cable, and now I've bounced around a bit and ended up in this cloudy world. However, it's not my first career. My first job was actually working as a fisherman, which I loved in the summer months, and soon got fed up of getting up early in the morning and getting cold and wet in the winter months. So I decided to change careers, and I ended up as part of Her Majesty's Royal Marines. And I quickly realised that I didn't really think that through because I still had to get up early in the morning, run around getting cold and wet. Spent 10 years as a Royal Marine, and that's me there in the picture. And then I transitioned into technology purely by accident. I must have stumbled into it. But I've been there over 20 years now. I'm a technologist. I'm passionate about technology. I'm very passionate about Azure as a platform and what it can do. I'm not familiar with the other hyperscalers. I throw my hat in the ring with Microsoft, but yeah, I'm a passionate technologist, and I'm keen to share my knowledge and experience with the community, and hence what we're doing now. I'm also active with blogs. I've got a few repos on GitHub as well, and I'm on Twitter, so please do reach out if you ever want to chat. Having fun, another little thing I do. So if you do follow me on Twitter, you realise motorbikes have been a passion and obsession of mine for many, many years. And you'll probably get bored of seeing some of the pictures I put up there, but essentially that's what I do in the real world, outside of sat here staring at screens. As I get out and I rag my bikes around race circuits, and I do a bit of teaching as well. So on to the main topic for today, Azure Netapp Files. It's essentially Azure Netapp Files is one of the services I think has been one of the most important ones Microsoft have brought to the platform in the last 3 years, because next month the service is 3 years in general availability. So it's quite a mature service. Historically, working with Azure over the years, some of the challenges, as I'm sure most of you will probably appreciate, have been networking challenges, performance, throughput, etc., and also storage challenges, especially in where the files are concerned. So Azure Netapp Files, actually, for me, at the time, was a bit of a game changer, because where I worked and the customers I worked with and I supported did have requirements around network attached storage and specifically performance requirements. And back then, in the bad old days, it probably meant the Windows file services, scale out file clusters to get more performance, meant bigger machines, bigger disks, etc., etc. And all of a sudden the cost mounted up. And then came along Azure Netapp Files. The challenges it does address things like cost. The examples are where the scale-out file servers I've mentioned. I've been involved working with customers who were traditionally deployed in that method, and then once we actually looked at the TCO of them moving off of that to something like Azure Netapp Files to underpin that storage, it became quite compelling, and it did substantially drive down cost. As I said, no need for big expensive servers, no need for big expensive disks, simply consume the storage on demand. Great for test and dev environments. As you'll see, we're going to talk about, essentially Azure Netapp Files is underpinned using NetApp's ONTAP technology. So the ability to snapshot clone volumes, create and destroy them on demand can be very useful in a test and dev environment. And then obviously the byproduct of that is going to be cost optimization. Because Azure Netapp Files also is a file-based network protocol, so it's NAS services. It comes to the fore in migration sense as well, because customers no longer need to re-architect or refactor applications to actually be cloud native or supporting the cloud. If, for instance, maybe timelines, they need to move quickly to evacuate a data center, because essentially it's the same methodology. You can lift and shift those workloads quite easily and then drop them into Azure and leverage the power of Azure Netapp Files to underpin the storage side. And again, scale, the biggest, one of the most compelling reasons maybe to move to a hyperscaler is the ability to scale and flex on demand. These resources can be, just stood up or destroyed as and when they're needed, and it does become, again, quite compelling for most customers. It's also really important to point out, Azure Netapp Files is a Microsoft first-party service. Whilst it has NetApp in the name, it's actually delivered to you, supported by Microsoft as well. So you don't need to procure any tin, no licenses, nothing else. You simply can consume enterprise grade high performance storage on demand. So the service itself, it offers the widest choice of file protocols, NFS versions 3, 4.1, and CIFS or SMB. And it also brings a 99.99% SLA as part of the service. It is the most advanced data management platform there is currently out there. As I said, the ONTAP capability, snapshot, copies, clones, and ability to replicate really does make it quite an attractive service. And again, this is all on demand. And as you're hopefully going to see towards the end of this session, I'll try to, or if you have time to get into a demo and show you around, it's quite a simplistic service to work with. You don't need to be a storage admin or an expert managing storage to actually use it. It's an Azure consistent experience. As I said, it's a Microsoft first party service supported by Microsoft. All the billing through the Azure portal, so through your consumption plan. There's no need to purchase any additional licenses or hardware. It's not a marketplace item. It is a first party service, so there's no need to worry about any hidden cost, any gotchas, or you both in the marketplace. Oh, by the way, you need this, and oh, by the way, you need that. And it does deliver on-premises class performance. Example of this, I'm working with a very large company at the minute, a global company specialising in accounting software, and they have that requirement to migrate quickly out of a data centre, conventional on-premises data centre, into Azure. But the application is a legacy or heritage, whichever term you to use, which whilst it is legacy application, it still does have a lifespan within the company. And it's important to them. It's a big money earner, but it also it's very highly strung and has a super low latency requirement. And of all the testing they're doing at the minute, the only storage platform which can meet their requirements is Azure Netapp Files. So it does bring that on-premises class performance into the cloud environment. It has multiple tiers. These are service tiers, so standard, premium, and ultra. The standard service tier, you can realize 16 megabytes per second of throughput per terabyte. Premium, 64 megabytes per second, and ultra, 128 megabytes per second of throughput per terabyte. As I've already mentioned, it is delivered using NetApp's ONTAP technology, which is all flash, delivered through the Azure ecosystem. So how it's structured within Azure. So within Azure, you have your subscription. Within your subscription, you create your Azure Netapp Files accounts. And then within your accounts, you create your capacity pools. So capacity pool, think of it as your aggregate storage, but it's also important to point out that capacity pool, once created, is where the billing starts. So you will be charged as soon as you create your capacity pool. And the minimum size of capacity pool at the minute is 4 terabytes. So no matter what, you will be charged for 4 terabytes. Whether you only create 100 gig volume in that capacity pool, you will still be charged for 4 terabytes. And as I said, then the volumes are created within your capacity pool. So overall, within the single account, you can stand up 12.5 petabytes of storage should you need to. So the performance size is quite simple, really. It's the service level times the volume quota will give you performance. So in this example, is a 10 terabyte volume at the premium service tier, 10 times 64 megabytes per second of throughput, 640 megabytes per second of throughput for that particular volume. Now, when Azure Netapp Files was first released back in May 2019, it was set up that QoS was the only option. So ultimately, you needed to size bigger volumes to get more throughput. And that was quite restrictive. So the example here, we've got a 10 terabyte capacity pool at the ultra service tier, which gives you 1280 megabytes per second of throughput capable within that capacity pool. And you can see the data volume is 4 terabytes. 4 terabytes, 4 times 128 will give you 512 megabytes per second of throughput. So that was the traditional one. But in June last year, Microsoft adjusted and brought manual QoS. So manual QoS gives you the ability to independently size volumes and throughput without the need to scale. So it makes it much more flexible service. One of the benefits as well of this flexibility is what we call dynamic volume shaping. So as you see here, the green line is the provisioned storage, whilst the blue line is the workload, the fluctuation throughout the day. An example of this would be something like, a VDI environment where you'll have early morning, 8 till 10 a.m. maybe, everyone coming to work, connecting in, logging in, so you get those login storms, more performance, more requirement. With dynamic volume shaping, you can flex the provision storage or flex the throughput demand, based on the actual demand. And the natural byproduct of that would be cost optimization by driving down the cost. And this can be done, either manually or using a function or a logic application, because essentially Azure Netapp Files it's a REST API driven service. So you can make those calls to flex the service as you need it. And that is within the service tier. And you can do that, it's unlimited. The only caveat there is that is within service tier. So you can take a volume, for instance, that's running at the standard service tier and move it to a premium if you do need that extra performance. However, there's a 7-day cooling off period before you can move it back again. The difference with Azure Netapp Files over other file services within Azure. So, Azure Files, it's a great service. It does have some limitations. One of those, as I mentioned, within Azure Netapp Files, you can flex the volumes within the service tier, on demand as you need it. With Azure Files, there is a 24-hour cooling off period. So if you did need to grow your file share to get more performance, then shrink it back again, you would have to wait those 24 hours, which is not ideal and doesn't really bring the flexibility of what a public cloud I feel should be. Authentication as well. It's very, very easy with Azure Netapp Files to configure Active Directory connections to host your CIF shares. It's a simple, configuration line within the portal, or indeed a line of code to configure your Active Directory connection string, and that way, every time you build an SMB CIF share, it uses that string to join that and connect your Active Directory, so you can leverage NTFS permissions. The only caveat there is connectivity is required, so you will need domain controllers. Azure Netapp Files is a private service. It's not publicly accessible, so it's deployed within a VNet, and we're going to discuss that more in a minute. But ultimately, because it's within the VNet, it does need to speak to your domain controllers. It does need IP line of sight connectivity, and those domain controllers will need to be within the same region and one hop as a peer away from the VNet where you host your Azure Netapp Files deployment. The other thing with authentication as well for Azure Files is it's not straightforward. To hook that into Active Directory can be quite clunky, even to the point where within the portal, when you go to configure it, Microsoft have actually given you a video to show you how to set up the permissions for the file service. So yeah, not ideal, especially if you need to use a video. One service that went GA back in November, or one feature of Azure Netapp Files, it's quite an important one actually, is cross-region replication. So cross-region replication gives you the ability to replicate volumes from a source volume to a destination volume in the partnered region. So you have your source volume. It's important to point out this is an asynchronous copy. You can configure the partner. So an example within the UK would be source in UK South, and then the destination in UK West. And then that creates an asynchronous copy to the partner region. That's a read-only copy, but it's extremely easy to bring that on demand online and make it live. It's simply a case of breaking the peering. And also a nice flexible part of this service as well. So if you need to run the ultra tier in your production, you can actually replica to a lower service tier to save money. And then, God forbid, when you do need to invoke DR, you break the peering and you move your volume to the higher service tier in the DR site. So it can introduce quite a bit of saving. Currently, the replication intervals are 10 minutes, 1 hour, or 1 day. So that 10-minute interval means essentially an RPO, which is going to be less than 20 minutes. Obviously, the time it takes to replicate that. For some customers, that is not ideal. They have operator level agreements with a business which needs to have less, and if that's the case, we do have a third-party tool that we bring in to meet this. But natively within the service itself, currently, it's only 10 minutes, 1 hour, or 1 day. So use cases where we see Azure Netapp Files being most commonly used. SAP, probably the biggest use case there is at the minute. One of Microsoft's biggest customers. The other one, which is probably the most common, probably we're all more familiar with, is Azure Virtual Desktop. It's becoming more and more common for customers who've tried to use Azure Files Premium, found that it's either not as performant or not as cost effective as it might have originally seemed. And I think the other failing that happens there is the name. So Azure Files Premium and Azure Netapp Files, with the 3 service tiers, actually performance-wise, and it's really important here, the performance of the Azure Netapp Files Standard tier, which delivers the performance and the consistent performance, meets or sometimes does exceed the Azure Files Premium tier. So it's a lot cheaper to use Azure Netapp Files Standard over Azure Files Premium. So yeah, one of the most common is Azure Virtual Desktop. Likewise, Microsoft SQL becoming more important. Things like Kubernetes, Oracle, OpenShift, IBM DB2, the education platform Moodle as well, containers, and one of the most common for me of late is high performance compute. So HPC workloads, I've been involved a lot with a couple of the Formula 1 teams in a couple of universities, doing some fascinating work, and yeah, that's it's been really interesting to see the actual time it takes to do analysis. For instance, the telemetry analysis, the Formula One guys. On premises, they have a phenomenal data center with some absolutely wonderful kit, which must have cost an absolute fortune. But much to their annoyance, when they benchmarked Azure, they processed the data 7 hours quicker with an identical data set than they did in their own on-premises data center, purely for the fact that they could flex that, on demand and scale up to what they needed. So I'm now going to attempt, forgive me, to do a demo of, hopefully the demo gods with me. In true Plu Beta fashion, I have kind of, here's one I made earlier, so to speak, but I'm hopefully going to try and talk you through that now. So just give me a second while I just switch screens. While I'm doing that, are there any questions? Nope. Okay, cool. I've written a bit of Terraform code, which I'm using as part of this. It is available in my GitHub repo, which I can share with you later on. Essentially, it's quite straightforward. Like most of us, I suppose, I do this for my own learning benefits. I'm not a coder. My code is far from elegant. I grew up in the admin world, so I'm suppose on the ops of the side of the DevOps coin. But migrating to a more cloudy world, I've kind of forced myself to sort of embrace it. And this is my effort. I've done a few examples, and if you probably see on the blog as well. So what I've created as part of this is a small lab environment for Azure Netapp Files. An account is the most simple thing to create straight away. Obviously, we need resource groups. So part of this is also creating a resource group. What I've tried to do this as well, I've tried to make it as simplistic as possible. So if you did want to take it away and try it yourself, please urge you to. The only thing, or the only file you should need to edit is this Terraform TF files file. Ultimately, you put in here the parameters you wish to use. So yeah, it creates resource groups. It also creates a VNet. As I said, Azure Netapp Files is a private service. It does need to live within a VNet. And this creates a single VNet with two subnets. Two VNets with two subnets. The important thing to point out as well is what you do need to do with Azure Netapp Files is create a delegation from a subnet to the Azure Netapp File service. This is what then brings the ANF platform into your VNet and gains you access to that. It's quite straightforward, as you can see in here. It's a simple couple of lines of delegation to the actual service itself. We then go off and we build our Azure Netapp Files accounts. What I have done in here, as an example, is I've included the Active Directory configuration, but I'm not using it because at the minute I don't have any domain controllers to use. But if you did have domain controllers, it's quite simple. You can uncomment this, and then within the variables themselves, you can configure what you need. Likewise, and there's two accounts, and you'll see why there's two accounts in a minute. Capacity pools, quite similar as well, very straightforward. Simple case for the capacity pool, it's service tier, Qos type, and size. And again, there's two of those. And then the volumes themselves. So what I've also done with the volume creation is, and these are NFS version 3 volumes, I've also included cross-region replication. So in the secondary volume here, I've included the data protection part, which is set in this volume as a destination volume, and it's got the interval frequency set to 10 minutes and the remote volume target ID set up. So that's a very quick whistle-stop tour of the code I used to actually build the lab. And I'm going to go and grab the lab itself. So this is my lab. Hopefully, is this visible, or do we need to zoom in? Might need to zoom in, I guess. I've got quite high resolution platform. Is that a bit more? Can people see that better? Yep. Okay. And so what I've created in here, because I'm using cross-region replication, I wanted to show it off in what we can actually do. So we've got resource group created in North and West Europe. Within my resource group, I have my resources, and in here I've got my Azure Netapp Files account. Couple of things to point out in here. What Microsoft have quite handily done, they've put in the settings for quota, so it kind of tells you what your current quota is like and what your defaults are. As an example, in the middle of last year, Microsoft introduced a soft quota limit of 25 terabytes. per subscription. So soft quota, it's purely there for the capacity team to manage the capacity. It's a simple support request for you to request more storage. The Active Directory connection string we mentioned, we do have one in here because this is our demo lab. But ultimately, this is where you would configure your DNS service, your domain name, your credentials, and then every time the service builds an SMB share, it uses those credentials to hook into Active Directory and your leverage permissions. The capacity pool, so in here, I've got a capacity pool, 4 terabytes at the standard service tier. I just drive into here. If I needed to resize my capacity pool, I wanted more storage, simple case, I just go and add more storage. Minimum is currently 4 terabytes, and the maximum is up to 500 terabytes. So that's it. I've now gone from 4 terabytes of storage to 10 terabytes of storage, as simple as that. The Qos type, as you can see, it's currently set to auto. You can set it to manual, but once you do set it to manual, you can't go back. But that manual QoS will give you the ability to independently allocate throughput to volume size. So if you only needed 100 gig volume, but you needed quite a bit of throughput, you could independently assign that. So the volumes themselves, this is my volume in North Europe. As you can see, currently I've got the throughput set at 16 megabytes because it's 1 terabyte volume, and it was on QoS, auto QoS at the beginning, which would set it at 16 megabytes. I can resize the volume similar to the capacity pool. So if I needed more storage, it's quite a simple case, just coming in here. Obviously, if there is capacity available within the capacity pool itself, I can simply come in and just increase the volume size. It takes a few seconds. If I wanted to change the throughput, again, straightforward. As you can see, based on the capacity pool size, because this is a standard tier, I've grown it to 10 terabytes. It's now just over 160 megabytes of throughput. So if I wanted suddenly to have 32 megabytes throughput on this particular volume, it's quite straightforward and changes. And again, all this, Azure Netapp Files, it's a resource managed service, there's a REST API. It can all be done programmatically as well, should you need to do that. And there is a logic application, which one of our colleagues has written, which actually monitors the capacity, and once you can set the levels. So once it, for instance, reaches 80%, it could grow it by a percentage, etc., and shrink it back again. Some of the features that are in here I preview. So if we look down the side here, we've got snapshots. So the great thing about Azure Netapp Files is you can snapshot volumes, quite straightforward. There is a snapshot showing in here because I'm also using cross-region replication, which we'll see in a second. But if you wanted to snapshot the volume, quite straightforward. Create a snapshot. And these are more or less instantaneous. And they're, because the way the ONTAP system captures these snapshots, it's pointers to blocks on the disk, it's extremely lightweight. Again, over Azure files, the snapshots there are slightly different the way they work, and they can take up more storage, which means more cost. But ultimately within here, they're extremely lightweight due to the way that ONTAP waffle file system works. What you can also do from that snapshot, you can restore to a new volume. You can also select to restore individual files now. This is a preview feature. And you could also, if this wasn't a replica volume, you could also revert the volume to a current state, or indeed delete. So the replication, cross-region replication. So as you can see here, this is my source volume. It's in a healthy state and it's mirrored. You can see the replication traffic gradually going through. There's not much going on here actually, because this is just for a demo environment. But ultimately, this is an asynchronous copy from one region to another. So quite a nice complement for a BCDR strategy. Currently, we don't do cross-zone. That is on the plan of intent, and it is coming, but we can do cross-region. And the backups. This is in public preview at the minute. So ANF backup policy goes hand in hand with the snapshot policy. So you can create snapshot policies with your, grandfather, father, son sort of hierarchy, daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, etc. And then you can use the Azure Netapp Files backup policy. That comes along using those snapshots, the same method, but it offloads those snapshots into ZRS storage. So it takes it out of the platform, puts it into ZRS storage. Again, it's all part of the service. You don't need to go and procure any backup software, no additional licensing or anything else like that. You can just simply configure it. So yeah, that is quite a quick whistle-stop tour of the ANF in the portal. Any questions? No? Okay, I'll crack on. Whilst I'm here, shameless plug, there are links here, but if you wanted to go and have a look at some of the code that I've been using on the GitHub repos I've set up here underneath events, there is one for the Welsh Azure user group, and you'll see here there's the PowerPoint presentation I've been using, as well as the code I showed you just now, which I used to actually build this demo lab. Okay, can finish this off. There we go. So in summary, I think one of the biggest pros of the Azure Netapp File Service Me is simplicity. It's a very, very simple service to work with. It does deliver high throughput, low latency, enterprise-grade storage on demand, and it can be quite efficient. If you speak to some customers, they'll look at it on the price per gigabyte and instantly say that's expensive. But when you start looking at it in the round, when you start to consider TCO, how simple the service is actually to work with, and how flexible the service is, it can prove to be quite an efficient service. And it can also help to drive down cost. As I said at the beginning, one of the customers I work with, moving away from conventional file services onto Azure Netapp Files saved them over €250,000 a year straight away. And the optimizations, the flexibility, as they understood the service, how they could flex, shrink, and grow it on demand, they did actually realize much more of that. And mobility, the ability to lift and shift a conventional heritage, legacy, whatever you want to call it, workload from an on-premises data center into Azure, it knocks down all those barriers. So go and get started today. It's quite simple. Log into the Azure portal. You can set up your Azure Netapp Files account, create capacity pools and create your volumes, and start playing with it. Be careful though, don't leave them on, because it can prove to be quite expensive. Most of my R&D is done on my own MSDN subscription, and I'm ashamed to say I forgot to turn one off the other day, and I blew the whole money in a day. But lesson learned. You thought I'd known better. I've been doing this for almost a decade. Some useful links as well. Said they are in this presentation. Feel free to go and grab it, have a look at it from the repo I just showed you. But hopefully there's some useful links, especially around the architectures now. Best practice architectural examples are growing as Microsoft find more workloads and more common workloads, more blueprint architectures are being brought out, and they are all available on the Microsoft Docs page. So thank you. I hope this has been useful and interesting too, and please feel free to ask questions, or indeed reach out later on and contact me if you need any help. Thank you.
Great stuff. Thanks very much, Anthony. That was brilliant, really informative. So yeah, great things. Need to take a look back at the NetApp service myself now. Things you just give me more things to do, Anthony. That's the problem, isn't it?
Sorry, mate.
I don't think we've got any more questions in the chat, but yeah, as always, Anthony, I'm sure you're available for reach out across the socials if anybody does have any questions in particular. But no, all I can say is thanks for joining us, and thanks for the session, Anthony. That was great stuff.
Oh, thank you, John.
Thanks very much.
You're welcome.
Virtual claps, or it's always difficult to know what to do now, isn't it? Just do that. Here we are, virtual claps. Cool. Okay. Shall we move swiftly on, Mr. Fatonka, to the elusive Welsh Azure quiz?
I haven't set the domain up yet. I wasn't doing it during the break, so you're going to be on the old link for now.
Cool. So, everybody join in. Usual thing, two £25 vouchers available for first and second place, yeah?
Yeah. Well, good odds tonight then.
Oh, I'm going to try and join.
Oh, we've got people coming in. That's good. That's a good sign. Means it's still working. There have been some updates to the app since the last time I spoke, mostly around the abundance of GIFs that have now appeared within the when I present, it now has Giphy integration in the management piece.
And this is open to the speakers as well, so
Yeah, by all means.
Keith and Anthony, feel free to
Keith's in
join in if you haven't already. Well, Keith's in, good. The more the merrier. How many we got there in the chat? 1, 2, 3.
About, excluding us, it's about a dozen. I think about 10.
Yeah, 10 or 11. That's 18 already. Anybody struggling to join, drop us a note or just say over your mic. If there are good odds, yeah.
And then we'll kick off. Oh, one more coming in. It's the 10 or 11. Full house.
I think that's about right, isn't it?
Here we go. Okay. What subject is covered by AZ700? Developer, networking, AI, or DevOps? It's networking. Well done. The 5 of you got that one right. What's the default cost of sitting AZ900 exam in the UK? It was a good guess, and that's ex-VAT. What people ask. It was mentioned in the talk.
You've made use of that feature enhancement there, Matt, with the GIFs, yeah?
They're on every question now. £69. Which exam is for Azure IoT developers? I can tell you in true Microsoft exam fashion, there are 2 that it definitely isn't. It's AZ220. 5 of you got that one right. Which feature of static web apps went GA this month? Key Vault integration, Apple authentication, Giphy integration, or private endpoints? Every Microsoft quiz, if private endpoints is an option, that's going to be the answer. Which of the following previews was not announced for container apps? Managed Identity, VS Code extension, Health Probes, or Docker Compose? Container apps, wonderful bit of technology. My new favorite. The answer was Docker Compose. All the others have been announced for preview. ASE, so that's App Service Environment. V1 and V2 are going away. When is this happening? August 2024, September 2025, December 2022, or never? And it was a accelerated decline of this. So it's August 2024, which is a lot earlier than most things are allowed to stick around for. It's one of the oldest services running on Azure, that is, I think. Under the hood, still using the old cloud services platform. When does the Build Hybrid Conference start this year? May the 10th, May the 17th, June the 3rd, March the 24th. Tell you, it's not going to be one of those. I think that might be May the 24th. I think that's a typo.
It's a typo.
It's a typo. My decision is final. What milestone did .NET MAUI hit this month? Preview 27, RC1. It went GA, or what's MAUI? It's RC1. Oh, that split people. It might as well have been preview 27. It was about preview 14, I think we went through. With Netapp Files, what's the minimum size for a capacity pool? I may have been typing this frantically whilst Anthony was presenting. Who was paying attention? 4 terabytes. Well done. How many copies of data are created in the case of geo-redundant storage replication? That's on Azure storage, I will point out. It's 6. 3 in a primary region, 3 in a secondary region. What's the name of the ARM-based processor for VMs now in preview? Is it the Bicep 101, the Exonis Z5, the Ampere Ultra, or the Snapdragon 911? No, it's the Ampere Ultra. Exciting stuff. This is VMs running ARM processors. Which exam did Johnny Chips pass this month? One of many, I might add.
I know that one.
I should hope so too.
What kind of question is that, Matt?
I know. Well, you know, it was relevant to A, one of our speakers, and B, the user group.
Go on, look at that.
AZ 600, mate.
People think that I'm into data, do they? All 2 of you.
2 people do. I think that's the last question. So let's take a look. Everyone ready? Oh, Johnny, you can't be winning that. So Johnny wins with first place. Then we've got Ross, Darren C, and whoever was the winner.
I'm just happy that I've beaten Ross for once. So Ross and Darren, yeah, top 2 places. Awesome stuff. Do me a favor and just ping me a DM on any platform just as a reminder, so tomorrow I can send the email off and get the vouchers sorted to you. So yeah, Ross and Darren, if you, I'm assuming that's Darren Chappelle, is it? Yeah.
Yeah, it
Cool.
is. Thank you, John.
Cool. Drop me, yeah, do that just as it acts as a reminder, and I can get the email typed up and get the voucher sent off to you. Congratulations, both. And there we go. Right, let's share my screen just to kind of finish off this month's show. There we go. So yeah, thank you everybody for joining. Congratulations to the prize winners. Huge thanks to the speakers, both Anthony and Keith, for 2 awesome sessions this evening. I'm sure everybody will agree. We've not got next month's group confirmed yet, just waiting on one speaker. So we will announce that in due course, but we've got one speaker already sorted, just waiting on the confirmation for the second, but it will be on the 18th of May. Usual time. We're going to keep to virtual for the time being. If you can do us a favor and scan that QR code and drop us some feedback, that would be absolutely awesome. But for now, thank you everybody for joining. Hope you've had a great time. Again, thank you to the speakers and for everybody else. Until next month, we will call it there. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.